Well, it's that time of year again. I'm here to present you my 7th annual winter outlook for the state of Oregon, including my predictions for PDX areas across the Willamette Valley and out east in the Grand Ronde Valley, where I live near La Grande. And as of this year, I am adding Government Camp to my winter weather outlook, so I hope you enjoyed that edition this year and continue to for many years to come. As you notice, I'm in a different setup. That is because I have transferred my Portland hotel room into my own mobile weather studio. That is because I am attending the Winter Weather Forecast Conference out at OMSI in Portland this Saturday. If you want to stop by, it starts at 10 a.m., although I would advise getting there earlier. If you want to see extraordinary weather enthusiasts and or meteorologists explain how they think this winter will shape up. It's a fun time that I get to witness every year, and I actually was thinking about presenting, but I actually missed the deadline because I've been extremely busy for the past couple months, hence why I haven't posted any YouTube videos. But I wanted to come back with something that is very important to me because, again, this is my 7th annual. I love it. I do it every year. I get better at it every year. I expand it every year. So I just really wanted to be able to get this out before the conference, but since I'm so late in the game compared to what I would normally be doing, this outlook is coming out weeks later than I normally would have liked and what I've done in years past, but that has also helped me been able to look at specific data points, make my hypothesis even more accurate than I think it was. It just gave me more time overall. So let's just jump right into it. So winter 2024 into 25, specifically for Oregon. Let's look at this. So this is the Canadian seasonal modeling. It goes out several months. This is specifically what we look at. This is the mean sea level pressure. This would indicate wetter conditions. This indicates drier conditions, and in the middle is, pretty normal either way. But look at this. So we start at October, and notice as we progress throughout the next couple of months, could Oregon be dominated by wetter than average precipitation? Yeah, I think that's a really good bet, and this specific model does agree that to be potentially the possibility, at least for a bit. But then look what happens as we get into November, December, January. All of a sudden, we kind of are in this split flow pattern. That wetter precip drops to the south into California, and we're kind of battling this drier air. But notice how Oregon could still be dominated somewhere in between, and that could just indicate we're not too wet, we're not too dry, we're just somewhere in the middle. But could that change after the new year? I think so, and this model continues to agree. Look at this bullseye northwest of us, but we're feeding off that drier air. This is January, February, March, April. We're still feeding off that drier air. So I think that's something to really keep an eye on this year, and something that I really do agree with, as you'll see as we progress throughout this video. Now, jumping over to the European seasonal modeling, specifically the 500 millibar heights. I wanted to show you this because this would indicate, could we be warmer than normal, colder than normal, or somewhere in between. Notice this is October, kind of in that bullseye for possibly warmer than normal conditions, right? And then all of a sudden we get into November, December, January, and it's like, okay, well, could we average out to be more near normal? Possibly. We're right on the edge of that. And then all of a sudden we get into the new year, and this could be anywhere between December and February. Specifically, this model is showing January. This is interesting. It's trying to bring normal temperatures, kind of like a surge of it, right into north west. And notice it's kind of approaching from Canada. And my first question was, well, is that Canadian air developing? Yeah, possibly. Here's this. It doesn't quite surge that right into the Pacific Northwest, but if we were to get that a little further south into the Rockies, east of the Cascades, we pull an east wind off of that into Portland, Could that be Arctic air somewhere in that time frame? Absolutely. But what I notice is interesting is even if we get that, I still think that these temperatures will still be not necessarily by departure colder than normal in 1, 2, 3 month average. It could look pretty normal. And kind of same way too with the warmer than normal conditions. I think that kind of just diminishes as we progress throughout the next couple of months. And notice that Canadian air potential that could be up there kind of just diminishes. Now this is March, but notice now all of a sudden we're kind of just getting back to the potential for at least near normal conditions. And could that be colder than normal? Well, my analog years seem to think so. We're definitely at that point, I don't think seeing a good chance period of seeing warmer than normal for the majority after the new year. So that is something I really wanted to touch on. So let's just hop into what we call analog years, which can just provide further evidence to support some of these theories. So these are my 4 analog years: 1952 into 53, 73 into 74, 2010 into 11, and 98 into 99. What I mean by that is the years that come right before this is what I found comparable to the year we just came out of, 23 into 24. And I've actually found decent success of just looking at, okay, well, these specific things happened. If they were to happen in the past, what would that look like for the next year? And obviously, with all of our climate, change that's happening and everything, that's very subjective. I mean, there's going to be tons of different things that would impact that and could even destroy that possibility. But I have found success in that. What I have found, though, to kind of come back to bite me, though, is like looking at these, and I have quite a few strong data points that make them true, but then all of a sudden the timing is whack. Like it's wrong with the timing. So I was thinking, okay, I need to rely more on timing of modeling and using it in conjunction with the analog years rather than just focusing on the analog years and not having a good supportive hypothesis from the modeling and then vice versa, okay? And I feel like that will strengthen my accuracy this year because I'm really taking everything into account. And you'll see that as we progress throughout my predictions. Okay, but we're just starting with the Enso cycle, which I'm sure you've heard of El Nino, La Nina, and Enso neutral, which is just neither. What people stereotype as average conditions across the Northwest, and wetter and colder, as you see here. This is a screen grab from NOAA for La Nina, and then drier and warmer for El Nino. But that's just not always the case. What is the true definition? Well, it's all about the central South Pacific sea surface temperatures. In a La Nina pattern, those temperatures are below normal. That's vice versa in a El Nino pattern, if that makes sense. But what that does typically bring is the storm track right into the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, you can make the conclusion that, we maybe, really gotta emphasize the maybe, have wetter and colder conditions across the Northwest, but that is just not always true. Do I think we'll have wetter conditions than normal this year? Yes. Do I think colder? Well, as an average, that's where it kind of starts to get maybe not. Yeah, you're going to have cold snaps, but is it just going to be a colder year overall? Maybe not so much, and you'll see that as we progress throughout this outlook, but that's exactly why the stereotype should not necessarily be taken with a grain of salt, just because it's just not necessarily the best way to explain things. But what I do want to show you here is 1952 through 53 and 73 and 74, the Enso cycles it brought. These are outliers. This is an Enso neutral, and I think it was trying to form into a weak El Nino at some point later winter and even into early spring of that year. And this is a very strong La Nina, so these are definitely outliers. But look, 2 data sets, 10 through 11, 98 through 99, both show moderate La Niñas. But because you kind of have the spread, I can't say for sure that we're going to see that. So I think odds favor weak to moderate La Nina. One thing I will say, though, is this analog year specifically has surprised me. Why? Because it was one of those years that maybe on paper isn't as comparable as you might think, and it's so long ago, like, why are you using this? Why are you using this? But I actually did use the following, or the year before this for the same data set last year, and there were just so many specific things that I didn't think that would have correlation. So that's why I'm kind of using this in here. And because NOAA has backed off on the likelihood of La Nina over the past even couple months, I think as I'm recording this, it's down to 60% likelihood. I'm not sure what it was a couple months ago, but I think it was like 80. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I just know that it has in fact weakened a little bit. They're still calling for a La Nina year, and I'm still calling for a La Nina year, but there's your margin of error there. I mean, could we somehow get into this territory? I mean, I can't rule it out. Even though it's not the greatest likelihood, it's something to keep in mind based on my findings that did come true last year for that same run of that data set. Just something very interesting to think about. But overall, I think we are somewhere between weak and moderate La Nina right now. In fact, right now we are still neutral, I think. So we have not even gotten into even a weak La Nina yet. So that is something to watch. But generally, as a whole, I think that is the most likely scenario that we will be in a weak to moderate La Nina. And let's take this more specifically. So that was just Enso cycles, right? But let's take this, okay, what were the big headlines from those years, those analog years that I can compare and use as potential concerns of what's going to happen this year? Sure, it's nowhere near a foolproof, step-by-step prediction. But what it is just telling you, like, okay, what could happen worst case scenario, and there is some truth to it. You got to keep that in mind as you progress throughout the season. Okay. Something I've found very interesting is half of these analog years, yes, half of them, two of them, and not just one, two of them brought flooding to the Pacific Northwest. So specifically, the 52 through 53 one was just for Western Oregon. It was a flooding in January. But then the 2010 to 2011 also brought a flood in January, coincidentally, that was not only for the west side, but also for the east side. It didn't look like it was as severe, but it was definitely something where some people got evacuated, and it's just something to definitely keep in mind. And coincidentally, both of these years also had a windstorm. The 52 for 53 was actually in conjunction with that. It happened in the same period, as far as I'm aware, in January, so again, specifically for Western Oregon. And then the one in November 2010 was specifically only for Northeastern Oregon and Southeastern Washington. But again, I got 2 years here saying that we could be in the cards for some sort of storm, whether that be maybe a wind event, maybe a flood event, and as these years show it, maybe somewhere across the Pacific Northwest, even if not everybody sees it, maybe portions of our area see both. Definitely not anything that I'm calling likely, but it is a potential. You have to keep that in mind. And then as we just get into more wintry type of analog years that I found interesting. So 73 to 74, one of my other analog years, that was record snow at Bend. We're talking 90.6 inches of snow. Government Camp, also record snow. Yes, 474 inches. Just interesting enough that one of those years also happened to bring really good snow to the higher elevations, the high country, and especially the Cascades. And something else I found interesting too was 98 through 99 was actually a year where PDX on December 23rd of that year of 98, it dropped to 11 degrees for a low. We have actually not been that cold since January 2017, which coincidentally was the event that I got inspired to start my own weather service and what kicked all of this off. So this is something that I found interesting, but also something to keep in mind as we progress throughout this season. So I've talked about the potential for high snow potentials into those higher elevations. But then all I've talked about is flooding and potential wind events in these years for the valleys. I mean, what does that mean? Well, that means, again, this is a mean of all my 4 analog years. So this isn't just saying those specific years. This is everything else, even that didn't even show those significant events. Brought below normal snow to the west of the Cascades, the lowland valleys, Willamette Valley, PDX, Salem, Corvallis, what have you, below normal. My range I'm coming up with is traced to 3 inches. I'm calling this varying snow because although you have less snow than usual, I'm thinking for this upcoming season, this is my official snowcast for this winter. Although you have that, then all of a sudden you jump up to the Grand Ronde Valley out east, and now you're near normal snow, between about 30 to 50, I'm thinking. And then Government Camp, above normal snow, 300 to 400 inches I am projecting this coming season. So as a whole, it will be wetter than usual, but you're going to see a big variance of those snow averages depending on where you are across the state, and a lot of that has to do with the temperatures, which is my next segment I'm getting into. But really quick, I did want to show you averaged out. These are at least several inches above normal, and even at the low end, a few inches for that precipitation from October through April. That's almost 40 at PDX for that total precipitation. Wallowa, one of my reliable data sets for the Grand Ronde Valley, 14.3, and then Government Camp 91.8. So it's, I think, pretty obvious that it's going to be wetter than usual. So let's get even more specific into this, okay? So this is my 3-month temp and precip average. One thing I noticed from years past, I try to be way too specific in terms of the timing. And again, there's been so many times where it's like, I predicted that, but I was completely off with the timing. So I'm really trying to avoid that this year. And what I've kind of come to is 3-month averages here. And I've been able to draw a lot of correlation in between the analog years, the modeling. So even if I can't get a full agreement on the specific month, I can give you pretty darn good agreement on the specific time period. And this is what I have. So between now and December, October through December, as I discussed, I think it's going to be warmer and wetter. This could be our rainy season. This could be the soaking rainfall that we see for this coming winter. But one thing I did notice in that, in looking through all of my data sets, is even though we can finish off a great year for that snowback to the mountains, it's looking like it could be a weak start. There's a potential for an underwhelming start to the ski season, to the just snow in general, even into those higher elevations, like where I'm at in the Blue Mountains of northeastern Oregon, even in the valley locations. It's just looking like it's a weak start. And again, I think that's because we are dominated by warmer than normal conditions, along with that wetter than normal conditions. And again, that's kind of where a couple of those analog years brought that flooding in, which is just something to watch. But at the bare minimum, let's just say that most of my averages come out to be correct. We are still looking at anywhere from 0 to 3 inches above normal precipitation. It's looking like. Big chunk of my analog years show that, above normal for that rainfall. So that would be 73 through 74, 98 through 99, and 10 through 11, okay? And this doesn't only include the precipitation, but also the temperature. So this could also be 0 to 3 degrees above normal, right? And here's one analog year that just goes crazy in those temperatures and precipitation, where we're 3 to 6 above normal. Again, that was specifically 73 through 74. But I'm not calling this necessarily an outlier. You may be questioning that, but I will show you as we progress here. Look at this. So December through February, I discussed that could be closer to normal. It could fluctuate at some point, but maybe the 3-month average is pretty darn close to normal. I think this is your best chance for lowland snow events, maybe an ice event, but anything that falls, and I mean this, like I discussed, will be light. So there could be several little tiny events that just don't cause much of an issue this year, okay? And at the same time, heavy mountain snow. So in that December through February period, I just think it's going to be great for the mountains, for those skiers, and like I said, even including just even the valleys surrounding the Blue Mountains of Eastern Oregon. I mean, this could be significant snow that could make up for that weak start. Okay, here's a really apparent outlier, 52 into 53, okay? So although a lot what I'm looking at could be close to normal and that precipitation and temperature, this specific thing is saying 4 to 8 degrees above normal, along with 4 to 8 inches above normal precipitation, right? So these are one of those things where it's like, okay, everything else is just not showing that. I don't think that's going to be that likely. But these are one of those instances where it's like, okay, well, if you were to just adjust this 1 month earlier or 2 months earlier, all of a sudden we have more reasoning for a crazy wet season before the new year hits, right? All of a sudden, that could be a match more of the 73 through 74 year. Not saying that will happen, but all I'm saying is that could bring greater concern for some of those more soaking, just torrential rain events, if that's the case. So that is just something to keep in mind. Could that just bump up earlier to credit 73? Because I said this is a very reliable analog year, as I've experienced last year. And like I said, a lot of these analog years have a lot of good points to them. They just come back to bite me in terms of the timing. So again, this is a what if, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, there could be some truth to that. And even if both of these things fall through and we don't see anywhere close to that excessive precipitation and that excessive warmth, we're still, I think, going to be warmer and wetter than usual. There's just no doubt about it, okay? And then half of my analog years during the December through February time frame, again, this also just completely punches this out of here in terms of being an outlier, because yet half of my analog years show an Arctic air blast, okay? So it's not like it's the highest likelihood, but we had the same odds last year through 2 other analog years that I ran, and we absolutely got that. So that's definitely decent odds. I mean, they're there definitely in that time frame to see a significant period of just frigid air, specifically crediting 73 through 74 and 98 through 99 possible. And like I said, their departures, though, still could be closer to normal. February through April, okay, kind of what I showed you on the modeling, too. I mean, the analog years are a little bit more dicey with this, but I still think there's a lot of conclusion to draw from this, because we're at least 0 to 3 degrees below normal and at least 0 to 3 inches below precip, okay? For a lot what I'm looking at, 62.5% of those analog years. And let me explain that a little bit more, because technically these are the only ones that really show this for temperatures and precipitation, while the 2011 data set is only the temperatures only. So that's why it kind of drops that percentage a little bit more to where it's a little bit more up in the air. But at the very least, I mean, all my analog years that I ran are just definitely showing the coldest departure in this time frame, and I think there's enough of a conclusion to draw to show that maybe we could also be the driest in that time frame. Okay? And with that, I've also found that if we're lacking that precipitation, even if we're cold, I just don't think it's going to be as significant as snow. Well, definitely for the mountains specifically. Yes, we'll still get it, but compared to this heavy mountain snow headline in this time frame, I think it's going to be overall lighter compared to December through February. But because we're still colder than normal, and that's an absolute, I'm thinking, you still have the potential for valley snowflakes at the same time. So could this be a year where we see maybe just like a snowflake here or there in March or April west of the Cascades? Maybe. But absolutely nothing significant. And if you were to at least see the best shot for a light event, I think it would be in the December through February time frame. Okay, but how accurate am I really? Well, I wanted to run through my accuracy from this past year. So these are all my points that I gave myself a thumbs up for this past year. So above normal fire season. That was the big point that I got from that 1952 data set from last year. And yet it really did come true despite, on paper not looking as comparable as you might think. So yes, that came true. We absolutely did see a higher activity, we did see higher activity with that fire weather the following summer, right? 1.5 million acres burned. That is an all-time record for Oregon. I can't believe that this actually happened. It is definitely sad to see. But I'm at least glad I was able to present that with, almost a year heads up. But that, yes, did in fact happen. Grand Ronde Valley snow, 10 to 30 inches. Yes, absolutely. Union, 9.2 inches. I told you that was going to be the lower end. There you go. High end, Wallowa, 32.6. Yep, told you that was going to be the high end. I actually wrote that in my blog that would be specifically the low end and the high end, and LeGrand would be somewhere in the middle. Unfortunately, LeGrand actually has terrible data sets. They have just so many missing from all these years, unfortunately. But I can tell you with pretty good confidence that I'm sure LeGrand was probably somewhere in the middle. I just don't obviously have the evidence to back that up specifically. But as you can see, that range was absolutely a slam dunk. Willamette Valley snow 0 to 5. Yeah, that was pretty good. PDX 1.6, Corvallis 2.7. Some places got less than that. Some places got more than that. I think that was a pretty good forecast that also gets a check mark. And also, a lot of my years were showing a late November snowfall for northeastern Oregon. Because typically, we get my first snowflake of the season, specifically dusting, in the Grand Ronde Valley, actually right around my mom's birthday, which is October 24th. And interesting enough, today, which is October 17th, we actually saw the first dusting of snow out at Tollgate, which is just above the Grand Ronde Valley over the pass, kind of heading towards like Walla Walla. And this morning at the same time, we also got the first accumulation at Government Camp today, October 17th, as I'm recording this. So definitely interesting to see that kind of play out in similarities. But could we see later snowflakes for more of these valley locations this year again? Possibly. I will get into that, in just a second. But I did just want to cover this, that So November 23rd of last year, we actually got the first dusting of snow at my house, which is about 20 miles north of LeGrand, about 500 feet higher in elevation. And that was also the first night that LeGrand itself saw flakes flying in the air. And all of a sudden, November 30th was my first accumulation event with LeGrand's first dusting. So I was like, wow, that was a pretty good check mark as well. And I made a pretty good point on my outlook from last year that cold would be a bigger story than snow. I told you that you would get 50 to 70%, I think I said 50 to 75% less snow than the previous year. But I talked a good deal about that cold, and that absolutely happened. We had that pretty significant January Arctic front moved in, and that also made it to where we were drier and we lacked that snow, and we just did not get as much snow for this past season. Also, correctly predicted a slightly mild November. On average, I mean, I'm just picking up bits and pieces, but specifically for PDX and LeGrand, kind of averaged out. We got 1 degree warmer than normal, and anywhere from quarter to half an inch below normal rainfall. That was also a forecast check. And I also said that moderate to strong El Nino was in the cards, and yeah, we got the super El Nino, plus 2.0, which is strong. So there you go. But what did I get more wrong? Well, there was definitely some points that I got wrong, but what I got right definitely outweighed what I got wrong, which is great news. I'm glad I got this run wrong. I ran another data set that I ended up completely taking that data set out of this year because it was one of the reasons why I was less accurate in just specific points last year, even though overall I was still pretty darn good in a lot of different ways. But this definitely took away from the accuracy I could have had. So I took that specific data set out for this year. I think it was 76 or 77, give or take, something like that. Absolutely incorrect. We did not see 3 to 7 inches below normal rainfall. We saw near to above. That was a terrible point. Absolutely terrible. Like not even remotely close. And I'm glad we didn't see that, because that same year that thought we were going to see that last year also brought a severe drought. And that just didn't happen. Yeah, we've been dealing with drought conditions for a while here in the Pacific Northwest, but nowhere near as severe as this. So thank God that this just did not happen. I still thought our coldest potential for the season, that we could maybe see Arctic air. And if we had precipitation, maybe our best chance for snow. And at those lower elevations, and the chance for the heaviest snow in those higher elevations would be December. Just 1 month too late. Again, why I'm grouping more of these months now, because I could get pretty good data. Just showing it in specifics can just be so hard. So I'm definitely think I'm improving on that this year. So yeah, that ended up hitting in January, but I was close. Still giving me an X for that though, because I just don't think that was the best headline. Driest January into February, not really. No, not close. It was March into April. I thought it was going to be the wettest in October. It was actually January. All that pretty inaccurate points. But what I will give myself is a half a point for what I said would be the warmest, February into April. It was not the warmest. December was the warmest. But it was still warmer than normal. That's why I'm giving myself a half a point. It's continuously February, March, April. Not even averaged out, but each individual month was warmer than normal. So I have to at least give myself some credit for that. But in terms of being the warmest, I cannot give myself credit for that specific point. So that would be a half a point that I give myself. So accuracy, 7.5 out of 12. Which would be 62.5%. I think that is good. I think the industry average is somewhere between 55 and 60. Obviously, that's for, regional things, and mine is specifically for more like Oregon, but I think that's pretty good. I got similar accuracy the year before, maybe just a percentage lower than this. So I'm definitely grateful that I'm keeping that accuracy up. compared to every other year that came before a year ago, which was more like 40 to 50%. So I'm very happy with that, and I think that's going to continue to increase, actually, in about a year when I do this again. There's just a lot of things that I looked at differently to hopefully give you a good idea on what this upcoming winter season will be like for Oregon. Well, I hope you enjoy that. I know this is probably a crazy long video. I kind of just lost track of time, but I really wanted to show you what I think is possible. Before I head out of here, get some sleep. I'm pretty exhausted. I practically pulled an all-nighter last night. I only got a couple hours of sleep, but very happy. This just makes me so happy to do this every year. But what I want to leave you with is I teased that today, as I'm recording, this is 17th of October, Tollgate and Government Camp got its first snowfall of the season. What could that be for PDX? Well, if I average out my 4 analog years, it comes to December 2nd for PDX. Just something I like to play with to see if I can, have any sort of accuracy there. It's more for games because that's very specific, but something I like to do because sometimes it can be kind of close. So just to keep in mind, December 2nd is my mean for PDX for that first snowflake, okay? And then for LeGrand, like I said, where I live now, specifically this is a union data set though, because as I said, LeGrand data sets suck. I'm sorry, but we really need to fix all that missing data, and for years to come, we need to just fill that in. I don't know why it's not getting fixed, but this is specifically for union, but the closest that I got here, it's in the same valley. November 15th, first snowflake, Grand Ronde Valley. There you go. So just little memes that I like to put together, and we'll see what happens. Well, if you're coming to the weather conference on Saturday, I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back into more consistent uploads here on YouTube very soon. I got a lot of great stuff coming. Sorry for my hiatus, but I am back. Hope you guys all have a great night, and peace out.